Hey, it's Brandon. Today I'm going to be doing a CultPop Thunder Round. What's a Thunder Round, you might ask? Well, it's when one of the hosts from the CultPop podcast does a 1 minute review of a comic. Simple as that. Or is it? See, these reviews are usually just for comics, but I'm going to try and expand on that and cover as much of the Time Lord Victorious event as I can. Which takes me to my experience with Doctor Who. I love it. Next. But seriously, I rewatch the revival all the time. I've seen Classic Who, and I love Big Finish. I love the Chimes of Midnight, I love Zagreus, I adore the Master of Callus, etc. So since I was already going to be checking out the comics and the audios, I thought I'd try to review them for the channel, and maybe cover the books if I can get some time. We'll probably talk about the comic issues on the Cold Pop podcast, including this one, so don't forget to tune in on Sundays at 10:30. Now, on to the review. Time Lord Victorious number 1, Defender of the Daleks by Jody Houser, Roberta Ingranata, and Enrica Aaron Angiolini. Comixology describes this as a thrilling new adventure for the 10th Doctor, as played by fan favorite David Tennant, that sees the shocking return of his deadliest enemies, the Daleks. But things aren't what they seem. Time is all wrong, and something is coming that terrifies even the Daleks. The first of two oversized issues kicking off the BBC's highly anticipated multi platform Doctor Who epic, Time Lord Victorious. Now, I think every Doctor Who comic has three main jobs: tell a good story through the writing, tell a good story through the art, and feel like a Doctor Who episode. Personally, I thought this book did spectacularly in the second and third regard, but not so much in the first. I thought Hauser did an excellent job making us feel like it was right out of the first few minutes of an episode. The Daleks were menacing and cheesy without being ridiculous, and the Doctor was perfectly written. Take this page, for example. The Doctor says, once, I thought I was Kafarak Gatri, destroyer of worlds, the oncoming storm. Now that is perfect 10th Doctor, he's very braggadocious, he's surrounded by enemies, and he couldn't care less. That fits perfectly with his personality, especially considering that this is the Time Lord Victorious era where he was at his most self-indulgent, in my opinion. And that carries on throughout the issue, with 10 being kind of snarky, as we see here, where he says, there's an old bit about a bit of wisdom about the enemy of my enemy, so tell me, why shouldn't I just go make a new friend? See, he's super snarky, doesn't care that he's surrounded by enemies, he's got guns pointed at him, couldn't care less. That's perfect 10, and I think that's great writing by Jody Hauser. I also felt the art was expertly done, with Ingranata and Angiolini telling a great story that made me feel like I was seeing an episode of the show without the classic budget restraints. Take this page, for example. 10 is talking about the Time War, and you can really feel how the horror of a Dalek invasion. The art really encapsulates how it feels when you're watching the show and the Daleks invade, and it does a much better job than the show because obviously the show has budget constraints, and usually you only see like 5 or 6 Daleks. And this is also why I wanted to make sure I mention Angiolini's name, because I think the coloring in this page is really what gives that visceral feeling of being invaded and of a city burning to the ground. Unfortunately, I felt that the actual story was a bit lacking. I said before that it felt like the opening of the show, and it does, but not a particularly engaging one. The Daleks, which usually would have been the main driving force, don't feel like a threat because we know they need 10 alive and he has no companions to hold hostage. Plus, the little action that is in the book, 10 narrowly avoiding traps, is done very quickly, and while the dialogue is great, I would have rather seen how he escaped the traps. And lastly, the villain. I'm sure there will be more terrifying with time, but spoilers for the final page, this is not exactly what I was thinking when I heard enemy from the dark times. The only saving grace is the paradoxes. Ten's lost memory is genuinely interesting, and I'm very excited to see where it goes from here. However, I should mention that this has little to do with Hauser. She has a lot of information to convey in this story, and only so many pages to do it, and I think she did a great job of giving us the bigger story beats to make the event interesting. It just made for a slower single issue. So overall, despite a relatively slow start, I enjoyed this issue, and I'm excited to see where we go next. Alonzi?